The archive was older than memory itself. It sat deep beneath the capital city of the Zorvathi Empire, carved into black stone that had existed before their species learned to walk upright. Valkyra had worked there for 30 cycles, cataloging artifacts that most citizens had forgotten existed. She liked the quiet. She liked the dust. She liked being alone with secrets that no one else cared to know. But today, she found something that made her blood run cold. The tablet was hidden behind a wall that should not have been there. She had noticed a crack in the stone, a small gap that let cold air through. When she pulled the loose rocks away, she found a chamber that was not on any map. Inside, resting on a pedestal of white crystal, was a tablet covered in writing so old that she could barely read it. The words were a warning. When the stars align over the third spiral arm, do not wake the sleeping ones. Do not touch Sol 3. Do not disturb the humans. They sleep now. Let them sleep forever. For if they wake, they will remember. And if they remember, they will come. And if they come, nothing in this universe will stop them. Valkyra read the words 3 times. Then she ran. The Emperor's throne room was a place of terror and beauty. Golden light fell from windows that stretched 100 meters high. The floor was made from the bones of conquered species, polished until they shone like marble. Emperor Thalrax sat on a throne carved from a single massive crystal, his 4 eyes watching everything, missing nothing. When Valkyra burst through the doors, the guards moved to stop her. But the Emperor raised one clawed hand, and they stepped back. "Speak," he said. His voice was like stones grinding together. Valkyra held up the tablet with shaking hands. "My Emperor, I found this in the deep archives. It is a warning from the ancestors. It speaks of a species called humans, on a world called Sol 3. It says we must never disturb them. It says, I know what it says." The Emperor's voice cut through her words like a blade. "That tablet is 12,000 years old. It was written by primitives who feared their own shadows. We have conquered 700 species across 12 galaxies. We have burned worlds and built empires on their ashes. What threat could sleeping creatures pose to us?" Valkyra fell to her knees. "Please, my Emperor." The ancestors were wise. They would not have hidden this warning unless they were weak. Thalrax stood, and his shadow fell over her like a death sentence. "The Expansion Council has already chosen Sol 3 as our next target. The system is rich in resources. The planet is perfect for colonization. And the creatures there?" He laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "They put themselves to sleep. Billions of them, hiding underground like insects. They are not a threat. They are a gift." In the war room, Admiral Zexton studied the holographic display of the Sol system. His scales were dark blue, marked with the scars of 100 battles. He had led the Zorvathi fleet to victory more times than he could count. But something about this mission made him uneasy. "The scans are strange," said his second-in-command, a young officer named Crixel. "Planet shows signs of advanced technology, but there is no movement. No communications. No ships. It is as if they simply... stopped." "Perhaps they died," Zexlon said. "No, Admiral. Life signs are strong. Billions of them. They are alive, but they are sleeping. All of them. The entire species chose to enter hibernation at the same time, 800 years ago." Zexon frowned. "Why would any species do such a thing?" Crixel brought up more data. Their star was dying, becoming unstable. Based on their records, they built some kind of massive engineering project to fix it. But the project would take centuries to complete. Instead of watching their world slowly die, they chose to sleep until it was finished. And the project completed. 12 years ago, the star is stable now, but they have not woken up. Sten stared at the blue planet on the display. It looked peaceful, quiet, harmless, but the old warning echoed in his mind. He had heard stories about it when he was young, tales that mothers told their children to make them behave. Sleep well, or the humans will wake. He had always thought they were just stories. Admiral Crixel said, "The Emperor has given the order. We are to begin harvesting operations immediately. The colonization fleet will arrive in 3 standard days. Zexthon nodded slowly. Then we begin. Send the harvester ships down first. Strip the surface cities for resources. If the humans wake, he paused. If they wake, we will deal with them. The first Sorvathi ships broke through Earth's atmosphere on a quiet morning. They descended over cities that had been silent for 8 centuries. Glass towers stood empty. Roads had cracked and been reclaimed by green plants. Animals wandered through streets where billions had once walked. It was beautiful in a sad way. A world frozen in time, waiting for its people to return. The harvester ships landed in what had once been called New York. Sorvathi soldiers marched out, their weapons ready, their eyes scanning for threats. They found none. Only silence, only dust. Only the echo of a civilization that had chosen to dream rather than watch itself die. Then deep beneath their feet, something stirred. In a bunker buried 3 kilometers below the Himalayan mountains, a red light began to blink. It had not blinked in 847 years. Computer systems that had run on minimal power for centuries suddenly surged to full operation. Screens lit up with data. Warnings flashed in a dozen languages, and then a voice spoke. It was not a human voice. It was the voice of the system that had watched over humanity while they slept. Foreign presence detected on surface. Threat assessment. Maximum. Wake protocol Lazarus initiated. All sleepers. Prepare for emergency revival. Across the planet, in bunkers and vaults and underground cities, billions of cryogenic pods began to hum. Frost that had covered them for centuries began to melt. Hearts that had not beaten in 800 years began to stir, and in orbit. A single satellite that had drifted silently for all that time suddenly came alive. It turned toward the Sorvathi fleet and broadcast a message on every frequency. In 10,000 languages, attention unknown vessels. You have entered protected space. Wake protocol. Initiated. Sleepers rising. You were warned. You did not listen. Prepare for. Contact. Admiral Zexthon heard the message on his bridge. For the first time in his long career, he felt something he did not recognize. It took him a moment to realize it was fear. On the planet below, the first cryogenic pod opened. A woman took her first breath in 847 years. Her name was Sarah Chen, and she had been a commander once, in a war that felt like a dream. Now, she opened her eyes and humanity began to wake. The cold was the first thing Sarah Chen felt. It was deep in her bones, like she had been carved from ice. Her lungs burned with each breath. Her eyes could not focus. Her muscles felt like water, but her mind was already racing. Red lights pulsed above her. Warning symbols flashed on the screen beside her pod. She had trained for this moment 1,000 times before the long sleep began. Emergency revival. Threat detected. Time to wake up around her. Other pods were opening. Men and women gasping for air, shaking off centuries of frozen dreams. Some fell to their knees. Some vomited. Some simply sat and stared, trying to remember who they were. Sarah did not have time for any of that. She grabbed the emergency kit from the wall and injected herself with revival medicine. The effect was immediate. Her blood warmed. Her vision cleared. Her hands stopped shaking. Within minutes, she was on her feet, pulling others up, giving orders in a voice that sounded strange after so long in silence. Revival protocols. Check your neighbors. Report any failures to medical. Move. The bunker came alive around her. Screens showed data from the surface. Ships she did not recognize. Symbols she had never seen. An alien language that the computers were already working to translate. And then she saw the number. The enemy count. 12,000 ships in orbit. Ground forces already on the surface. An invasion fleet larger than anything humanity had ever faced. Sarah smiled. It was not a happy smile. Well, she said to no one in particular. I guess retirement is canceled. On the surface, Sorvathi Commander Drexville watched his soldiers strip the empty human city for resources. The buildings were strange. Too tall, too fragile. made of glass and steel that bent in ways Zorvathi architecture never did. His people built for strength. These creatures had built for beauty. It seemed like a weakness. His communicator buzzed. "Commander, we are detecting energy signatures underground. Large ones. Getting larger? The sleeping ones?" "Yes, Commander. They are waking up. Thousands of them. Millions. The rate is increasing." Drexel felt a slight unease, but he pushed it down. They have been asleep for centuries. It will take them weeks to recover. By then, we will control the entire planet. Continue operations. He was wrong. Humans did not wake up like Zorvathi. When a Zorvathi emerged from deep hibernation, they needed months to regain full function. Their bodies were slow to restart. Their minds took time to clear. Humans woke up angry. Within 6 hours, the first human soldiers reached the surface. They came up through tunnels that the Zorvathi had not detected. They wore armor that looked crude, but moved faster than anything Drexel had seen. They carried weapons that his scanners could not identify, and they did not hesitate. The first attack came at dawn. A squad of 12 humans against a Zorvathi patrol of 50 soldiers. The Zorvathi had better weapons, better armor, greater numbers. They should have won easily. The battle lasted for minutes. No Zorvathi survived. Drexel received the report with disbelief. 12 of them? Only 12? Yes, Commander. They moved in ways our targeting systems could not predict. They used the terrain. They used each other. One of them killed 9 of our soldiers with a blade when his weapon ran out of power. He was laughing while he did it. Drexel stared at the screen. Laughing? Yes, Commander. Laughing. High above Earth, Admiral Zexton received a communication request from the planet's surface. Not from his soldiers. From the humans, he accepted it. The face that appeared on his screen was old. A female human with dark skin and white hair, her eyes sharp and clear despite her age. She sat in what looked like a command center, screens glowing behind her. "I am Director Amara Okonkwo," she said. Her voice was calm, almost pleasant. "I speak for the United Human Coalition. I am told you are in charge of this invasion." Zexton leaned forward. "I am Admiral Zexton of the Zorvathi Empire. You should know that resistance is pointless. We have 12,000 warships. Your planet is surrounded. Your people have just woken from 8 centuries of sleep. You cannot fight us." Director Okonkwo nodded slowly as if considering his words. "Admiral, I appreciate your position. I truly do. But I need you to understand something." She leaned closer to the screen. "We did not sleep because we were weak. We slept because we were tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of war. We built a machine to save our son, and we chose to dream while it worked. We dreamed of peace. Of a future without conflict." She paused. "You have woken us to war instead. Do you understand what that means?" Zexton felt that strange fear again, but he forced it away. "It means you will lose." "No, Admiral. It means you have made us remember. Remember who we were before we chose to sleep. Remember what we are capable of when we have no other choice." She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "You have 6 standard hours to leave our system. This is not a negotiation. This is a courtesy we extend exactly once." Zexton laughed. The sound echoed across his bridge. His officers joined him. 6 hours. "Director, you are surrounded. You have no fleet. Your people are still climbing out of their beds. What possible threat could you offer us?" Director Okonkwo did not seem bothered by his laughter. She simply nodded, as if she had expected this response. "I had hoped you would be reasonable." "I truly did," she sighed. "But I suppose every species needs to learn this lesson the hard way." She reached off screen and pressed something. "Release Prometheus." The channel closed. Zexton turned to his officers. "What is Prometheus?" Before anyone could answer, every sensor on every ship in the fleet began screaming. A massive energy signature was building on the far side of Earth's moon. Something was powering up. Something enormous. Admiral Crixel said, his voice shaking. "I am reading an energy output beyond anything in our records. It is ... It is bigger than our entire fleet combined." On the main screen, they watched as the moon seemed to crack open. Light poured from inside it. A shape emerged, rising from the lunar surface like a god waking from its own long sleep. It was a weapon. A weapon built into the moon itself. A weapon that humanity had constructed before their long sleep, just in case they woke up to danger. Just in case someone was foolish enough to ignore the prophecy. Prometheus was online, and it was pointed directly at the Zorvathi fleet, ZEX, then stared at the impossible thing before him. His scales had gone pale. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair until his claws drew blood, for the first time in 12,000 years. The Zorvathi Empire faced something they could not conquer, and it had only been 12 hours since the humans woke up. The Zorvathi had conquered 700 species. They had studied each one carefully before attacking. They knew how to find weaknesses. They knew how to break spirits. They knew how to turn proud civilizations into obedient slaves. So when they came to Earth, they studied the humans too. What they found should have made them confident. Humans were small. Smaller than Zorvathi by nearly half a meter. They had no claws, no fangs, no natural armor. Their skin was soft. Their bones were fragile. They could not survive in extreme cold or heat. They needed to eat and drink constantly. They slept for a third of their lives. On paper, humans were one of the weakest species the Empire had ever encountered. But paper did not show what the Zorvathi learned in the first week of fighting. Commander Drexel stood in the ruins of what had been his forward base. 40 hours ago, it had held 2,000 soldiers and enough weapons to level a city. Now it was ash and twisted metal. The attack had come at night, from a direction his sensors said was impossible. 17 humans. That was all it took. He had watched the recordings a dozen times. He still could not understand what he had seen. The humans did not fight like any species he knew. They did not form lines. They did not follow predictable patterns. They moved like water, flowing around obstacles, filling gaps, striking where they were not expected. When one fell, the others did not retreat. They fought harder. One human, a female with red hair, had taken a wound that should have killed her. Instead of dying, she had used her own blood to blind a Zorvathi soldier before breaking his neck with her bare hands. She had lived for another 4 minutes before her body finally gave out. 4 minutes, with a hole in her chest, and she had been smiling the entire time. Drexel sent his report to Admiral Zexthon. The response came within the hour. Hold your position. Reinforcements are coming. Do not underestimate them again. But how could he not underestimate them? Everything about them said they should be weak. Everything about them said they should surrender. The mathematics of war were clear. The Zorvathi had more soldiers, better weapons, complete control of orbit. Any rational species would negotiate. Humans were not rational. On the other side of the planet, another Zorvathi commander named Velthax was learning the same lesson. Her forces had captured a small human settlement. The inhabitants had been sleeping in a bunker beneath the town. When they woke, Velthax expected fear. She expected pleading. She expected surrender instead. She got a 73-year-old grandmother named Elena Vasquez, who had somehow turned a farming robot into a weapon of war. The machine rolled through Velthax's soldiers like they were made of paper. When they finally destroyed it, Elena was already gone. Having escaped through a tunnel she had dug while her robot bought her time. A tunnel. She had dug a tunnel in 6 hours using kitchen tools. Velthax captured 3 humans that day. She interrogated them following standard Imperial procedures. Pain, isolation, psychological pressure. Techniques that had broken 1,000 species. The first human, a young man barely old enough to be called an adult, said nothing for 16 hours. Then he began singing loudly, off-key, the same song over and over, until Velthax wanted to tear her own ears off. The second human, an older woman, seemed to break. She agreed to tell them everything. She talked for hours about human history, human culture, human biology. She answered every question in perfect detail. It took Velthax 2 days to realize that nothing the woman had said was true. She had wasted 48 hours on complete nonsense. The third human was the worst. She was small. Young, barely more than a child by human standards, she should have been the easiest to break. Instead, she spent her captivity learning the Zorvathi language. Within a week, she spoke it better than some of Velthax's own soldiers. She used her new skills to insult them creatively. In poetry, when Velthax finally released her in a prisoner exchange, the girl smiled and said in perfect Zorvathi, "Thank you for the education. I will use it to write your empire's obituary." Velthax sent her own report to the admiral. It was 3 words long. What are these things? In orbit, Prometheus hung above the planet like a silent god. It had not fired. It did not need to. Its mere presence had frozen the Zorvathi fleet in place. Any attack on Earth's surface was now limited, careful, hesitant. The Zorvathi knew that if they pushed too hard, that weapon would push back, but the humans were pushing hard on the ground. Every day, more of them woke. Every day, their organization improved. They came from their bunkers not as scared refugees, but as soldiers, scientists, engineers. They had prepared for this. Not for the Zorvathi specifically, but for any threat. Any challenge? Any reason to fight? Because that was what humans did. They prepared for the worst. They expected disaster. They built backup plans for their backup plans. Admiral Zexton called a meeting of his senior officers. They gathered in his war room, surrounded by screens showing maps and data and casualty reports. The numbers were not good. "We have lost 6,000 soldiers," Crixel reported. "Our ground forces are being pushed back on every continent. Human resistance is organized and growing stronger by the hour. How is this possible?" Another officer demanded. They were asleep. They had no military, no fleet. They should be helpless. Zexon stared at the map. "Because we misunderstood them. We saw weak bodies and assumed weak spirits. We saw no claws and assumed no weapons." He pointed at a red zone on the map. "Do you know what happened here? 3 humans held a bridge against 200 of our soldiers. Not because the bridge was strategic. Not because they were ordered to. They held it because," one of them said, and I am quoting from their communications, "Those blue bastards are not getting past me." He turned to face his officers. "That is what we are fighting. Not a species. Not an army. We are fighting pure, irrational stubbornness. They do not surrender because they have decided not to surrender. Logic does not matter. Odds do not matter. They fight because fighting is what they do." "Then what do we do?" Crixel asked. Before Zexon could answer, a new alert flashed across the screens. A signal from Earth, a broadcast on all frequencies. Director Okonkwo appeared on every screen in the fleet. "Admiral Zexon," she said, "I hope this past week has been educational. I want you to know that we have been holding back. Prometheus could have destroyed your fleet at any moment. We chose not to. We wanted you to understand something first." She paused, and her old eyes seemed to look directly into Zexon's soul. "We did not sleep because we gave up on war. We slept because we were tired of winning. We were tired of being the thing that other species feared. We wanted to be better. We wanted to build instead of destroy." Her voice hardened. "You have reminded us what we truly are. And now I am going to show you why the ancient prophecy told your ancestors to let us sleep." The screens changed. They showed something rising from the dark side of the moon. Ships. Hundreds of them. Thousands. A fleet that had been hidden, dormant. Waiting for 800 years, humanity had not just built Prometheus while they slept. They had built an armada. "Your 6 hours ended a week ago," Director Okonkwo said. "This is what comes after." The human fleet powered up its engines and began to move, and Admiral Zexton finally understood why the prophecy had been hidden in the deepest vault of the Empire. Some warnings were too terrible to remember. The message from Earth spread across the galaxy like fire. Director Okonkwo had broadcast on every frequency. In every language the human computers had decoded. The message was simple. The message was clear. The message changed everything. To all species under Zovathi rule, to all peoples who have suffered under the Empire's boot, to all civilizations that have been conquered, enslaved, or destroyed. We are the humans of Earth. We have woken from our long sleep. And we are not afraid of the Zorvathi. Across 1,000 worlds, beings of every shape and size watched the broadcast. They saw Prometheus hanging in space, a weapon capable of cracking planets. They saw the human fleet emerging from the moon, thousands of ships built in secret. They saw Director Okonkwo, an old woman with fire in her eyes, daring the greatest empire in history to do its worst. On the slave world of Velanara, a young worker stopped her labor and looked up at the sky. She had never known anything but chains. Her mother had been born in chains. Her grandmother had been born in chains. For 300 years, the Velanari people had served the Zorvathi without hope. Now, for the first time, she felt something strange in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it. It was hope. "They are really fighting back," she whispered. "They are actually fighting back." The Zorvathi overseer heard her. He raised his shock stick to punish her insolence. But before he could strike, 10,000 Velanari workers turned to look at him. They did not move. They did not speak. They simply looked. The overseer lowered his weapon and walked away. Something had changed. The galaxy could feel it. On the Zorvathi homeworld, Emperor Thalrax watched the reports with growing fury. His generals stood before him, none daring to meet his eyes. The news was bad. The news was very bad. Rebellions on 17 worlds, one general reported. The Krix have risen against their governors. The Velanari have stopped working in the OR mines. The Thousand Broken Worlds Coalition has reformed and is requesting alliance with the humans. Thalrax demanded. How has one species done this in 2 weeks? They gave them hope, my emperor. For the first time in millennia, someone is fighting us and winning. Word has spread. Everyone knows about Prometheus. Everyone knows about the human fleet. Everyone knows that we are ... struggling. Thalrax slammed his fist against his throne. The impact cracked the ancient crystal. Then we stopped struggling. Send every ship, every soldier, every weapon. I want the human homeworld reduced to ash. I want their fleet destroyed. I want their name erased from history. My emperor, another general said carefully, that would leave our other territories undefended. The rebellions would spread. Let them spread. We will reconquer them after the humans are gone. Nothing else matters. This infection must be burned out at the source. The generals exchanged looks. They had served Thalrax for centuries. They had never seen him like this. Never seen fear hiding behind anger. The orders went out. 40,000 warships began converging on Sol. The humans saw them coming in the command center beneath the Himalayas. Commander Sarah Chen stood before a holographic map showing the incoming fleet. The numbers were staggering. 40,000 ships. More firepower than humanity had ever faced. More than enough to overwhelm them, even with Prometheus. Well, she said, they are definitely taking us seriously now. Director Okonkwo smiled grimly. Is everything ready? Almost. We have received responses from 63 species. 31 are sending ships. The Velanari are leading a full uprising on their homeworld. The Krix fleet has broken from the Empire and is heading here. What about the others? Watching, waiting. They want to see if we can actually win before they commit. Okonkwo nodded. Then we need to give them a show. Sarah pulled up a communication screen. I have been thinking about that. The Zorvathi believe they understand us now. They think they know what we are capable of. I think it is time to remind them that they have only seen a fraction of what humans can do. What do you have in mind? Sarah's smile was sharp. We did not just build Prometheus during the long sleep. We built other things too. Things we hoped we would never need to use. But if the Empire wants to send everything they have... She pressed a button. New signals appeared on the map. Dozens of them. Hundreds. Hidden bases on asteroids. Weapons platforms in the outer system. Defense satellites that had drifted silently for centuries. Waiting for this moment, then we should probably show them everything we have to. On Earth's surface, the news of the incoming fleet spread quickly. 40,000 ships. The largest invasion force in galactic history. Enough to burn the planet 100 times over, the humans did not panic. Instead, something strange happened. They made jokes about it. A video went viral across what remained of the human internet. A young man stood on a rooftop, watching the sky through a telescope. Behind him, news feeds showed the fleet count climbing higher and higher. 40,000 ships, he said to the camera. He was holding a baseball bat. You hear that? They need 40,000 ships to come fight us. He grinned. We must be doing something right. The video got 2 billion views in 6 hours. Another video showed an old woman teaching her grandchildren how to shoot. The kids were laughing. The grandmother was laughing. Alien warships hung in the sky above them like dark clouds. Are you scared, Grandma? One child asked. Scared? Baby, I have been waiting 800 years for something interesting to happen. Let them come, cross the planet. Humanity prepared for war the same way they had always prepared for war. With determination, with creativity, with absolutely inappropriate humor, a group of engineers spent 48 hours straight converting a water treatment plant into a chemical weapons facility. When asked why they were not sleeping, one of them replied, "Sleep is what got us into this mess. We will sleep when the lizards are dead." Retired pilot named Marcus Webb walked into a recruitment center and demanded a ship. He was 84 years old and had been out of the cockpit for 9 centuries before the long sleep. "Sir," the recruitment officer said, "with respect, are you sure you are up for this?" Marcus leaned forward. "Young man, I flew combat missions when your great-great-grandfather was in diapers. I have been dreaming about flying for 800 years. Give me a ship, or I will steal one." He got a ship. As the Zorvathi fleet grew closer, humanity reached out to their new allies. Secure channels linked Earth to a dozen different species for the first time. Strategies were shared. Coordinates were exchanged. Former slaves and ancient enemies found themselves working together against a common threat. The Krix were warriors who had been conquered 6,000 years ago. They had nearly forgotten how to fight. The humans sent them training videos. Within days, the Krix were drilling with renewed purpose, their ancient battle songs echoing across their ships. The Velinari were builders, not fighters. They did not know how to wage war, so the humans taught them how to wage peace instead. How to sabotage supply lines, how to disable ships without destroying them, how to resist without violence. Do not have to fight to help. Sarah told the Velinari representative. Just make sure the Zorvathi have to fight on 10,000 fronts instead of one. The galaxy was waking up, and at the center of it all, on a small blue planet in an unremarkable solar system, humanity stood ready. Director Okonkwo broadcast one final message before the Zorvathi fleet arrived. It was not for her enemies. It was for her allies. For the species watching from the shadows, waiting to see what would happen. "We did not ask for this war," she said. "We did not want it. We slept for 800 years because we were tired of conflict. We dreamed of building a better future." She paused. "But dreams must end. And when they do, you have to face reality. The reality is that some things are worth fighting for. Freedom, dignity, the right to exist without fear." She looked directly into the camera. "Today we fight for all of that. Not just for humans. For everyone. If you have been waiting for a sign, this is it. If you have been waiting for someone to stand up first, we are standing. If you have been waiting to see if it is possible to win," she smiled. "Watch closely." The Zorvathi fleet dropped out of hyperspace, and they found Earth surrounded by ships, not just human ships. Ships from a dozen species. Krix warships with weapons that had not fired in millennia. Velinari transports converted into carriers. Vessels from the 1,000 broken worlds, finally united for the first time in history. A coalition fleet assembled in 2 weeks, held together by nothing but hope and spite. Admiral Zexton stared at the display. His 40,000 ships faced nearly 20,000 enemy vessels. The odds were still in his favor, but not by much, not nearly enough. And behind those ships, Prometheus waited, silent, patient, ready. The human flagship broadcast a single message to the Zorvathi fleet. It was not a threat. It was not a warning. It was a question. Still want to do this? Admiral Zexton had fought 100 battles. He had commanded fleets against enemies twice his size. He had never lost, not once, not ever. But standing on the bridge of his flagship, watching the coalition fleet spread out before him, he felt something he had not felt since he was a child. Doubt. "Admiral," Crixel said quietly, "they are hailing us." On screen, Commander Sarah Chen appeared before him. She was young for a human commander, barely 50 by their strange counting. Behind her, humans and aliens worked together at their stations. A Crix warrior stood at one console. A veterinary technician worked at another. A sight that should have been impossible just weeks ago. "Admiral Zexton," Sarah said. "I am Commander Chen of the United Coalition Fleet. Before this begins, I want to offer you one final chance. Turn around. Go home. Tell your Emperor that soul is not worth the cost." Zexton straightened his scales. "I cannot do that, Commander. My Emperor has ordered your destruction. I serve the Empire." Sarah nodded slowly. "I understand. I want you to know that I respect that. Loyalty matters." She paused. "But so does survival. When this is over, remember that we gave you a choice." The channel closed. Zexton turned to his officers. "All ships, attack formation. Target the human flagship. Destroy their leader, and the coalition will fall apart." 40,000 ships surged forward. The Battle of Seoul began. The first hour was chaos. Ships exploded on both sides. Energy weapons painted the darkness with fire. Missiles carved bright paths through the void. The Zorvathi had numbers, but the coalition had desperation. And desperation made them dangerous. The Crix fought like they had been waiting 6,000 years for this moment. Because they had. Their ships were old, their weapons outdated, but their pilots flew with a fury that made up for everything they lacked. They did not care about dying. They only cared about taking Zorvathi with them. The Velinari were not warriors. But they had spent centuries learning every weakness in Zorvathi's ship design. They knew where the armor was thinnest, where the engines were vulnerable, where a single precise strike could cripple a vessel. They did not fight. They dissected. And the humans did what humans did best. They improvised. A human cruiser ran out of missiles 40 minutes into the battle. Instead of retreating, its captain accelerated toward the nearest Zorvathi battleship and rammed it at full speed. Both ships exploded. The captain's final words were broadcast across the fleet. "Tell my kids I love them. And tell these bastards to stay out of our solar system." A squadron of human fighters found themselves surrounded by enemy ships. Rather than surrender, they linked their engines together and created an improvised explosive that took out an entire Zorvathi carrier group. A human engineer named David Park was trapped on a damaged station with no weapons and no way to escape. He spent his final hour broadcasting false sensor readings to the Zorvathi fleet, making them see ships that did not exist, sending them chasing shadows while real coalition vessels struck from behind. Hour after hour, the battle raged. The coalition took losses, heavy losses. Ships fell. Friends died. The numbers turned against them slowly, inevitably, but they did not stop. And then Prometheus fired. The weapon had been waiting, watching. Its targeting systems had tracked the Zorvathi flagship since the battle began. Now, with the enemy fleet fully committed, it unleashed a beam of energy that burned brighter than a star. Zexton's flagship vanished in an instant. One moment it was there, the next, nothing but scattered atoms. The Zorvathi fleet froze. Their admiral was dead. Their command structure was shattered. And Prometheus, was already targeting its next victim. All Zoravathi vessels, Sarah Chen broadcast. Your leadership is gone. Your fleet is crippled. We do not want to destroy you. We never did. Stand down, and you will be treated fairly. Continue fighting, and Prometheus will not stop until there is nothing left. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, Zorvathi's ships began powering down their weapons. On the Zorvathi homeworld, Emperor Thalrax watched his empire crumble. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Rebellions spreading. Fleets defecting. Colony worlds declaring independence. The empire he had ruled for 1,000 years was falling apart in a matter of days. And at the center of it all, one species. One small, soft, impossibly stubborn species that should have stayed asleep. His throne room shook. The humans and their allies had arrived at his homeworld. Their fleet hung in the sky like a judgment. When the doors opened, he expected soldiers, warriors, conquerors. Instead, 2 old women walked in. Director Okonkwo leaned on a cane, her movements slow but her eyes sharp. Beside her, Commander Chen wore no armor, carried no weapons. They looked like they were coming for tea, not conquest. Emperor Thalrax, Okonkwo said. We need to talk. Thalrax stared at them. You should kill me. That is what conquerors do. We are not conquerors. Okonkwo sat down in a chair that had been brought for her. Chen remained standing, watching. We are tired people who wanted to sleep peacefully and woke up to find an invasion fleet over our planet. We are not interested in ruling your empire. We never were. Then what do you want? Change. Okonkwo leaned forward. Your empire has enslaved hundreds of species. It has burned worlds, ended civilizations, and caused suffering beyond measure. That has to stop. Not because we will destroy you if it continues, though we will, but because it is wrong, and somewhere, deep down, I think you know that. Thalrax said nothing for a long moment. His claws dug into the arms of his throne. You could destroy us, he finally said. You have the power now. Prometheus could crack our world like an egg. Why do you not simply end it? Chen spoke for the first time. Because we spent 800 years dreaming. And do you know what humans dream about, Emperor? Not conquest. Not revenge. Not power. She walked closer to his throne. We dream about what we could build if we were not so busy fighting. We dream about exploring stars we have never seen. We dream about meeting species we have never known. We dream about a galaxy where every being can live without fear. She stopped directly in front of him. You woke us up to a nightmare instead. You made us fight. You made us kill. You reminded us of every dark thing our species has ever been. Her voice was quiet, but it carried the weight of centuries. We do not want to be that anymore. We want to be better, and we want to give you the chance to be better too. Thalrax looked at her for a long time. Then he looked at Okonkwo. Then he looked at the sky outside his window where human and alien ships orbited his world. What are your terms? The empire dissolves. All enslaved species go free. Your military is reduced to defensive forces only. Your homeworld remains yours, but you will be watched. And you will have a seat on the new Galactic Council, same as everyone else. No more, no less. And if I refuse, Okonkwo shrugged. Then we leave. We do not need to destroy you. Your empire is already falling apart. Without us to fight, your former slaves will finish the job themselves. It will be bloody and terrible and take decades. Or you can end it now peacefully and spend those decades building something new instead of watching something old burn. Thalrax closed his 4 eyes. When he opened them again, something had changed. The pride was still there, but so was something else. Something that might have been relief. I accept your terms. 1 year later, the first session of the Galactic Council opened in a great hall built on Earth's moon. Representatives from 100 species filled the chamber. Some had been enemies for millennia. Some had never met before. All of them were here because of a single choice made by a single species. Director Okonkwo, now too frail to stand for long, sat in a special chair at the front of the hall. Beside her, the ancient prophecy tablet stood behind glass, reminder of how this had all begun. A new inscription had been added beneath the original warning. Commander Chen had written it herself. We were never sleeping because we were weak. We were sleeping because we were tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of surviving. We slept hoping to wake to something better. You made us wake to war instead. Let this be the last lesson the galaxy ever needs. Do not wake the humans unless you are prepared to help them build their dream. Because if you wake them to a nightmare, they will make sure you share it. But if you help them build, they will share that too. The council opened with a moment of silence for all who had been lost. Then, slowly, the work of building a new galaxy began. It would not be easy. Nothing worth doing ever was. There would be disagreements, failures, setbacks. Some species would never forgive each other. Some wounds would never fully heal, but for the first time in 12,000 years, there was hope. On Earth, a child looked up at the stars. Her grandmother stood beside her, pointing out the lights of ships passing overhead. "Grandma, what are those?" "Those are our neighbors, little one. Coming to visit, going to trade, flying to places we have never seen." "Were they always there?" The grandmother smiled. "No, baby. For a long time, we were alone. We slept, and the universe forgot about us." She knelt down to look her granddaughter in the eyes. "But then we woke up, and we made some new friends. Is it safe now? The scary aliens are gone? The scary aliens learned not to be scary anymore, and so did we." She hugged her granddaughter close. "The universe is very big, and there is so much to see. But we do not have to be afraid of it. Not anymore." Above them, the stars burned bright. Humanity was awake, and this time they would stay that way.